But it's a good Monday. Glad to be back. Lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy weekend, and
Crazy good.
yeah, amazingly good. I was trying to think last night as I was falling asleep, and then just on the short drive I have down here. The only thing I can say about this weekend was it was an amazing movement of God. It was. I don't know how else to describe it. It was, and I don't think that that's a short sell of it. I said this several times throughout the weekend. I said this going into this weekend, that from the drop of the hat of this thing, when Doug first called me, I knew God was in it. And that may seem odd to say, and that may seem cliche to say, but really for the first time in my life, I just had this absolute, unequivocal feeling, not just like a thought. Oh, I have a thought. I think God's in. I mean, it was like a gut-rooted feeling that when Doug called me and what he said, our friend Doug Boog from Buck Creek, he was the lay director for the men's side. When he called me back in, I don't even know when it was, February, and started walking through the process of how he was putting the team together. And he said, I was trying to do this, I was trying to do that, but, I was just really struggling with trying to make it make sense. And he said at some point in the process, he just sort of turned it over to God. He just prayed through it, and things just started falling in place. And he called, I think there's 36 people that he had to call to be on team. Every person said yes. And that doesn't happen all the time. I've talked to previous light directors about things. There's always excuses, just like guests. Oh, I've got this, I've got that. And when he said that when he called me on the phone to talk to me about being on the team, he said to me, I turned this over to God. I mean, I just prayed through this. I could, you hear people say that, and you're like, oh, that's a nice thing to say. I could feel it when he said it. Like, and we're 20 miles apart on the phone. I'm sitting in the Menards parking lot. I think he's probably sitting in his office in Crown Point. But I truly felt it back then. And then, I'm in all honesty, driving to Crown Point every other week for meetings is not my highest priority. But just in that, there wasn't even a thought going through the process of prep. It was just something I had to do. It was not like you've got to do this, but it was just like, I've got to do this. And so each meeting, there was just this great vibe on the place. And it wasn't the place, it was just like the stuff. And the talks, the previews were like, we just kept looking at each other like, seriously? These are amazing. I mean, like, people are just dumping from their hearts, and they're just people are going to be moved by these talks. And I missed one meeting, and it hurt. I was sick. Saturday morning, I was just exhausted. I couldn't get up, and I just couldn't breathe or whatever it was. And I was disappointed to get up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, drive to Crown Point, or not to be able to. And so then we get into the weekend, and again, now you're trying to taper things a little bit. It's like, okay, all right, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's not over spiritualize this thing, and let's let it play out. Let God do what He's going to do with it. And man, I'll tell you what, it right out of the box, several of us who've been on team before just kept looking at each other like, this is different. I mean, talks were just sinking differently. Talks were just coming out differently. And some people had given talks before, and they'd been involved in team before, and some had. Our friend Justin Savage, who had been in a few weeks back, he gave his talk and just knocked it out of the park. And what was interesting was when he had previewed it, and I thought it was a really good preview, some people said, need to put more of your story in. And then, I don't even remember when he was in. He came in and he was, he was a little nervous about, what to say, how do I go now? And then when he opened up, it was just like natural. I mean, obviously he just flowed. Well, he had gone back and listened to that. He's like, wow, it's awesome to have that on the web so I can go back and watch it. And he's like, yeah, those are things that I should probably share with people. So him coming on here opened him up to be able to share some of those things as well, and it was the right thing. And like I said, it was the third talk of the weekend, and It just started connecting with people. And just as the weekend flows out, I start getting nervous because I'm thinking this thing's crescendoing way too quickly, and I don't speak till Sunday. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. This is the first talk where I've consciously not written it out. I had an outline, but I just really felt that I needed to go through the weekend to see what the flow of the weekend was. So, and then just really leave myself open to what God was going to say. And then Friday just continues out, and it's just, we're all starting to look at each other like, seriously, where's this thing going? This is getting way beyond us, way quicker than any of us could have imagined. And the discussion, this is a bunch of guys, right? Now, girls may be different. This is a bunch of guys who've not yet known each other for 12 hours, and they are pouring out their hearts to each other. I mean, there's conversations taking place and side conversations taking place. Our spiritual team was just phenomenal. Danielle and Jim Norris, a guy we pray for all the time. Right. And Gary Gurman, a guy that's just been so paramount in key points along my journey. I think they were working overtime, but I think they would have worked more if they could have. I mean, just their presence there was amazing. And the talks just keep coming. And I will tell you, one of the sort of revelations, something that God revealed to me during this period of time, was just this ability to not understand and not grasp the concept. But there were some really, really raw stories being told. We heard Justin's. That one did not stand alone in just how bared open some of these guys made their life experiences, so that they could, where people could see how low they had gotten. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of amazing stories, and actually there's a bunch of amazing stories. But at one point, this one story that was shared, I mean, it is heart-wrenching over heart-wrenching. I mean, and it's just, I have to have him come in sometime. He's been in the studio. We'll have to see if he wants to come in and share this, because it is a powerful testimony of how far one can fall. And the thought that came to me was that at that point, at the lowest point in this person's life, I mean, I can't imagine your life getting any lower. God knew he was going to tell that story this weekend. God had that in his back pocket to say, because there's someone that needs to hear the story of addiction and how bad it can mess up your life. A picture perfect life, a life from the outside that was like people would be jealous of. And even in the stumble, or even in some of the hardships, there was good things coming out of it. I mean, there were good things that were happening. And I just remember standing there at the pray-in, and it just sort of opened up to me that this was part of the plan, that we were all there with these bizarrely unrelated stories, yet completely related in God's plan, to be here at that, or there at that time, to share with these men. And the variety of situations that the team members had gone through, you sort of, I guess, in summary of the weekend, you go through the process of saying many times, if we could save just one, if we can reach just one person and bring them closer to, or bring them to Christ, then that will make everything worth it. The entire amount of time, I think somebody calculated it takes like 4,000 man hours to run this weekend. And you just say, you know what, that will be worth it. And at the end of the day, we don't take a survey, people don't write it down, but by their own profession and their own public statement, lives were changed. People came to Christ. But just that mentality of if we can reach just one, if we can just bring one a little closer, if at the end of this someone's life has changed, maybe not even here, but it gets them on the right path, that attitude permeated, and I think that's the thing that carried us through. And the other thing that at some point I just started thinking, having been in this environment several times and not ever experienced it on this level, this was the first time where they said, you know what, we'll just take anybody that wants to come. I mean, go through the process, but we're not going to put an artificial cap on the number of people that can attend this. And they had 37 guys go through this thing. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but there were times where they struggled to get 15 in my time there, in the last few years. And the women have 48 going through next week. And I just think that maybe we took the reins off it, and God took the reins off it, and just let it happen. So, I mean, there was just a lot of looking at each other. I at one point described it as just holding on to a rocket ship over this weekend and just trying to keep up with it. It was phenomenal. And like I said, at the end of the day, we don't keep score other than to know that there have been some souls won to Christ, and there were indeed. So that was pretty phenomenal to be a part of. I woke up this morning exhausted. I don't know. It hit me about 7 o'clock last night, but just through the weekend, I think we all just sort of hit a wall last night at one point. And God bless the people who had to stay there. And I stayed as long as I could, and I just literally had to go home. But Pete, our friend at CBC, drive by every now and then, and his team stayed there to get things buttoned up so the women could take off. They were already there, putting shelf liners down and covering bad spots in the wall. Yeah, there's a whole. I'm surprised they don't go first because we mess it up. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to come in after a week of men at camp and be at camp. There's a lot of things wrong with that. So, I'll let your imaginations run wild there. But they were already there, and our my friend Lisa was in there with her team, and it was really cool because their team was very involved in the weekend too, helping serve meals and just being there at the different points where the community can come in and help out. And they were just same sort of thing. They're just caught up in the spirit of it because they've been along because we meet in the prep times together. So anyway, pretty cool. Great banquet, 71. And as I said, some lives were changed.
As in number 71, not...
It was, it was the 71st Indiana Dunes Great Banquet.
Okay.
And this next week is 72. That's the women's weekend. Even numbers are women and odd numbers are men for us.
I'm looking forward to hearing Lisa, our office girl. She went through the walk.
She was
walk 2 or walk 4?
Walk 2 Emmaus.
Walk 2 Emmaus.
Walk 4 Emmaus would be a fundraiser.
Right. Yeah. We're
going to do the Walk 2 Emmaus. She was glowing, albeit tired when I walked in. I came in the front door over there, and that's what she said. She had a big smile on her face, but she says, "Yeah," because they said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm just exhausted, but I'm just completely lifted up." It's a weird spot to be in, but she said, "I know, in the same spot." So
it sounds like a lot of, there's that heart and head kind of a disassociation sometimes. When you were talking about, I'll pray for you, and that's a nice thing to say, or I've prayed through this. It's a nice thing to say.
Exactly.
But, there's a difference between saying it and doing it, and
right.
and feeling it. Feeling that it's real. It really happened, and so that was what I got out of your little summary there. It'll be cool to watch it. I'm sure it will unfold as the week goes on, and you have more memories and things kind of.
Yeah, and I'll say another sort of experiential thing. Gary Kerman, who I again referenced, is a guy that was there's a couple of people I can point at that were paramount in my faith journey, and I shared that yesterday. And I said it was gonna be 45 minutes, and it was 45 minutes. Felt like I was talking for an hour and a half when I was up there, though. I kept thinking, I've got to spin out of this. But then I kept saying, no, this is what I'm supposed to say. Should I say, no, just say that. It was, and that's really the first time I've ever done that too. And again, this is from the holy mackerel. I kept saying to people, I don't know what I'm going to say. And that's a hard thing for me to say because, well, that's not true because there's times we flip the mic on and say, oh, I got nothing. And then an hour and a half later, right. And that's the way I start my talk is I don't have any problem talking. I mean, there's no issues with me being able to fill time with words. But there is, I mean, I was trying not to be concerned, but I'm listening to these guys talk and I'm thinking, they're setting the bar way too high. It stinks to be the 13th talk. And then I said to Doug, I said, but I guess it's better than being the 15th talk because he was fitting in Jim Payton, who was the 14th talk, just kept saying, would you just mess up? Just mess it up. I don't need to have to follow that, whatever's already going on. But then he knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was just, and at some point he just goes, I am completely off script and I don't even know where I'm at. And it's just like, you wouldn't know. Good morning. Good
morning, Lisa.
But it was, but it was just one of those things where you could tell and I had said to him, just let it be. You've got this. It's fine. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got this. And I'm like,
nope,
don't worry
God's
about it.
got it.
Don't worry about it. And like, seriously, he starts walking away from the podium and I'm like, he is just in a flow. And, because I went up with a page of hand scratched out notes that I was writing down, just some points I wanted to make sure I didn't leave. And I think I covered some of them, left a bunch of them. And there was so much more after I walked away. I'm like, oh, I should have said, and I'm like, no, nah. There was a whole lot of editing that was going on in my head. But it was one of those things where I was just like, I wasn't even really sure where I was going with the conversation when I was saying it. And I've been down that road before, but this was like different. I was like, sort of like, kind of like, hey, this is fun. Where are we going now? And it just yeah, it was really, like I said, the first time I've really gone through that situation where I did not. And somebody said to me, hey, that wasn't the talk you previewed at all. I'm like, I know. I really didn't over prepare for it or over, try to make it happen. It was really cool. I think it fit in with the weekend well. Referenced the radio. Gosh, talked to a lot of people about radio over the course of the weekend, and got hopefully some folks checking us out and
cool.
Folks who had always or had already knew that we were here, and so it was good all around.
So
Morning.
Speaking of radio and preparation, I'm curious, since we have the lovely Jackie Jones.
Yes, Jackie.
Here.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Jackie.
Jackie.
Good morning.
So I'm wondering if you had any thoughts or if you had the time or the foresight to send anything to Jackie. I'm sure she's prepared.
Oh,
anyway.
I did
I
nothing.
see she's got books and notes and
Yeah, I didn't.
highlighted, color-coded notes over there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she's got something.
She's ready to attack.
I'm ready.
Take on the day. All right.
Well, as I was praying about what I should do today, last week at the very end of the show, we did the Aaronic blessing, and the Lord was just like, I want you to do that. So I started doing it, thinking that we were going to go over the whole thing. Nope. We're going to do one word.
Wow. Awesome.
Wait, no, it's called the what?
The Aaronic blessing.
Not ironic.
Aaron, the priest.
Right, not ironic.
Aaronic.
No.
Ironic.
Okay,
Aaronic.
all right.
The ironic blessing. I don't have to think about the ironic blessing.
Okay. Like, I'm going to bless you.
Blessing somebody
Even
for
though you
rain
don't
in a
want it.
flood. Yeah. We pray for rain. We give you rain in a flooded field. That's ironic.
Yeah, so.
That's a whole nother book in the Bible, I think.
I think so.
We didn't make the
Numbers.
canons.
So first I'd like to read the passage that we all are familiar with, and then read another version of it that's more the concrete form of what it is, which is what I did last week. This is from Numbers 6. It says, Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh cause his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his face to you and give you peace. That's the normal English version that we're all familiar with. And then this is the other one. Yahweh will kneel before you, presenting gifts. Yahweh will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yahweh will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards you, bringing order. And Yahweh will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahweh will lift up the wholeness of his being and look upon you, and he will set in place all you need to be whole and complete. Okay. So I thought I was going to do the whole thing, and I'm not. Because that's, yeah. The word that we're going to be doing today is the word for bless.
Bless, okay.
Bless. And which are bless you. And then, so we have that in the English translation. Now, in the other translation, bless is said, will kneel before you presenting gifts. So that's the more concrete version of it.
So the word bless means to kneel before you
Presenting
and
gifts.
present gifts. Okay.
That's in the, there's different forms of, well, we'll get to that. The Hebrew word is barak, which the concrete is a knee. Okay. So that's how they
Barak
get to kneel.
Okay.
And the abstract would be bless. The bending of the knee to drink from a pond to present a gift. It comes from another root, a 2-letter root, which means a filling with a gift. So we have all these words that come off of this, and they're very related. They're all knee, to bend the knee in homage, to drink water, also to extend the idea of presenting a gift or giving to honor to another. And then you have gift come off of this and bless. After they have bless, it says in the sense of bringing a gift on a bended knee. I'm just curious what you guys think, just when you guys hear bless, what do you guys think of that word? Because bless is throughout all Scripture.
Yeah. I think it's almost like a multifaceted word. It's kind of like those words. I think of it as a word like love, where you've got in the Greek multiple words. In fact, that's one of the things we talked about this weekend. I mean, you have a love that in Greek, there's a word that's different for the way that you love food, and the way that you love a brother, and the way that you love a spouse, and the way that you love, or God loves you. And there's different words for each of those words. And if I was paying attention, I could share them with you. I mean, there's agape, there's philos, eros, and I'm missing one. But anyway, there's different Greek words for that. And I imagine that there's got to be different Hebrew words in that same regard too, wouldn't there be? Because really, that would be interesting that we go backwards like that. But anyway, so I think of blessing in the same way, because you can give a blessing. You could say, God bless you, when somebody sneezes. I'm not sure what exactly we're blessing people with, but we are.
That's a whole nother program.
Okay. But then you can sometimes we use it in the term for prayer, like to give the blessing over a meal or something like that. You can be blessed, like you've received something, whether it's a healing or something.
I just think of favor, and that in and of itself can translate into many ways. Also, the word bless and blessing and be blessed. It's kind of it's one of those words that it reminds me of, like when you try to conceptualize grace, which I was trying to do this week. So I'm like, oh great, here we go again. It's another one of those words where it's not concrete, but we use it so.
Well, it is concrete, but we don't understand the concrete.
Right, yeah. We don't, I'm going to be quiet. You can just explain it.
Grace, you want me to explain grace?
Or if you want to go there,
explain bless.
Both.
Both? Well, maybe I'll start with grace and give you a recap of what grace is real quick, and then we'll go back. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about grace, and it totally opened up so many things for me, just a better picture. The Hebrew picture is the 2-letter word. It's the wall and the picture of the seed. And so you combine those together, and it's the seed continues, or the seed, the protection of the seed. I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but the tent wall, how they would camp is they would camp in a circle, forming a wall, and then there'd be an empty space in the middle of it. And that's how they would camp. They would camp, so the wall was protecting. So it wasn't just one man off by himself and another man off by himself like we often like to do. it was a community, but the community would be in a circle form. And then the seed is always a cool picture to me, because who is the seed? It's him. So
Right.
it's almost like he's protecting the camp. And then, you know, you look at through the time of the temple. I mean, the temple was placed in the middle, and we're around the middle. We're around the temple, protecting it. And that's the same way with our hearts. You know, like, we need to protect that. We need to protect the temple of us, and guard it and keep it. And so that's kind of like a very, very short recap of what grace is. But going back to bless, the concrete is to kneel down, and that's kind of foreign for us. I mean, I never really would associate bless with kneeling down for some reason. I mean, I can see it once I started reading about it, but I didn't really see it at first. This was, let's see, Genesis 12:3. It says, I will bless. This word bless could be kneel down. I will kneel them down. So let's see, I'll read this again. Genesis 12:3, it says, and I will bless them that bless you, and I will curse him that curseth you. And he's talking to Abraham about the next generations. Those people that come against him, Yahweh is going to curse them. And the word for curse is to spit upon. So those that spit upon you, I will spit upon. And those that bless you, I will bless you. I will bless them. So, I mean, you just look over in the Middle East today. That's still going on today. You know, those that...
Spitting on each other.
Yeah. They're cursing them, you know, that have low regard for the people, you know. They're still here today.
Yeah.
You know, God doesn't allow them to go away from, you know, he chooses to protect them. Now he also chooses to send them, you know, when they're in disobedience, but he doesn't destroy them.
Right.
But, you know, going back to the kneeling down, those that kneel down before him, he will kneel down before us. And so that goes back to the Aaronic blessing, because it says Yahweh will kneel down before us presenting gifts. And that's totally foreign to me. It's like, Yahweh shouldn't be kneeling down before us. That's
Right.
not right. But then I was reminded of, let's see, Psalms 8:5 and Hebrews 2:7. It says that Christ lowered himself under even the angels. And I'm like, oh.
He lowered him.
He lowered himself lower than even the angels to come down to us.
Okay.
To present a gift of everlasting life to us. I mean,
Right.
he's that ultimate
Right.
gift.
Okay.
So when we think about, you know, him kneeling down and presenting gifts, I mean, that is definitely one of the gifts that I would say would be, you know, that Yahweh presents us with gifts, and that he will guard us with a hedge of protection. I mean, this in some ways is a prophetic picture of what Christ came to do for us. But I had a really hard time when I first started reading that it's like, no, Yahweh doesn't do that. He,
Right.
you know, like, we're not worthy of that.
Right.
And let's see, you know, and I think that I was reading something yesterday that totally blew my mind. Talking about in Genesis 1:27, and God created man in his own image. And that verse can be translated better as, and Elohim, which is God, the great and powerful one, filled the man with a representation of himself. So the image means representation, which is his character. So when Yahweh comes down and he says that he's going to present us with gifts, and then that's also a picture of Yeshua coming down before us, even lower than the angels, and presenting the ultimate gift of everlasting life to us. We follow in that same pattern because we are made after him. And it brings a new meaning to Matthew 16:24 to me, where it says, take up my cross and follow me. You know, we are made in the image of him, so therefore we act just like him, if we accept that. Yeah.
I did some wordplay with that during my talk too.
Yeah.
That whole made in the image, because if you look at it, God said actually let us make him in our image, and my talk was body of Christ, and so I'm going down a little different road here with you, but it was an interesting lesson that I looked at it, in that we're all needed as who we are, to be part of the bigger, to accomplish what it is he wants. And God models that to us. And so I think, we look at it initially, and I don't know what I was thinking the first time. I wasn't thinking the first few times I tried to read the Bible. Well, when you start spending time in it, and it's one of the things I really enjoy about this, and what I tell people about this is, it makes us stop down and focus on bits and pieces, and not try to engulf a huge amount that is not going to get to us if we try to eat everything at the same time. It's not going to do us any good. It's going to make us sick, really. This will be evidenced by, as much say, Friday night. But the that whole, as I call it, Team God approach. I mean, from the beginning, he had the three parts that then he instilled in us. He didn't say, I'm going to create man just in your image, or just part of my image. It's the whole us image. And so you have Father, Son, and Spirit in us then, and he then, like I said, models that out. The Spirit moved across the water. He spoke the world into existence. They each did their own spot. In your scenario you were just talking about, Jesus Lord himself below the angels. So there's another part of God that's filling a unique role that Jesus plays. And that's where we have to learn that. I think sometimes we get caught up with, well, I have to be able to do this, and I have to be able to do this, and I have to be able to do this, and well, I can't accomplish this, or I'm not as good as that person is in that part of my life, and I'm not as good as that person is in this part of my life. And we end up beating ourselves up because I'm not as good in these parts of my life as the best I see in these other people. So, but on par, maybe there's things that I do collectively better than these people, but it's not about better. It's about, this is who I am, and this is the role that I'm supposed to play.
Yeah. Well, going off of that, the Lord can use our weaknesses for his strength, because then we have to rely solely on him. Mm-hmm. And I've realized that in a lot of my life, where the things that I've really struggled in, Yahweh has somehow decided to use those, because this is not in my comfort zone, to do this type of thing. Even Hebrew, the language Hebrew, I shouldn't, and I've told this before, I shouldn't be doing this from, just my background in school and so many other things. I shouldn't be able to, but with the help of Yahweh, I am able to do it. Right. And that's why I say anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But the word bless, there's different, in all languages, there's different, you say, like the setting. A word can mean different things depending on the setting that it's around.
Contextual.
Yeah, contextual. There are 3 different moods in Hebrew for words, and the simple mood is just to kneel down, just to put your knee down. The causative is to cause to kneel down, like someone causes you to bend. And then the intensive is to drop at the knee. And that is what this word is. It's the intensive form, to drop to the knee. So a good example of this would be in our culture, marriage. When a man proposes to a woman, he drops to his knee, sure, and he presents a ring to her. And that's a really, when I was doing some study and I was listening to a guy, Jeff Benner, he has a really good teaching on the Aaronic blessing if anybody wants to listen to it. And that's one of the things that he brings up, is that, in our culture, that is what happens. He goes to his bended knee, and that is the intensive form, because he's telling her that he is willing to lay down his life for her, and he's presenting a gift, which is what a blessing is. It's saying words with your mouth, but it's also giving something too. And where is it that I wrote it? Greek thinking is just words for bless.
I mean, Greek thinking.
Greek thinking in Greek. Okay, we're gonna between Hebrew and Greek thinking. Greek thinking is more abstract, so we're just going to bless with our words. Whereas
okay.
Hebrew is you do bless with your words, but you also bless with your actions. It's not just a one thing. It goes hand in hand together.
Okay.
So, but you have to have the action with the words. You can't just have one, and that goes back to James, where it talks about faith without works is dead. I was thinking as I was studying, I mean, this stuff, what is that sound?
Okay, I thought I was the only one. I'm like, it sounds like they're raking rocks somewhere, but I don't see anybody anywhere doing anything. So I don't know. Strangeness.
Yeah.
Glad I'm not the only one who heard it, though.
No, you're not.
Thanks.
I was like, well, I'm a little worried. I thought it was in here. But as I was thinking, the scripture is, we've talked about this too, where everything connects to each other. Like I can start on blessed and I can go all over the place because everything connects together, and that's the beauty of the Hebrew language is, like you said, just taking all of Hebrew or all the scripture and just, reading through it and trying to get all you can, like sometimes it's good to slow down and
Right.
you can connect things to other things and have a full picture of what it, of part of his bigger plan,
Yeah.
and then just keep moving on.
That comes up over the weekend when you have people who now are sort of fired up and they're like, well, where do I dive into the Bible? And there's a lot of people who say, well, start with John, and then someone's, well, I want to read Revelations. And I said, well, start with whatever you want that's going to interest you enough to like stick with it, but grab something to help you study. Because even if you were to dive into John, which is a place where a lot of people get pointed, I said, look, you can get just as much starting at the very beginning. But I would give you this advice: get some commentary, get some study, additional book that as you're reading through it, you can look at someone who's far brighter than I am and say, what is the contextual of this then? What is the bigger picture of this? What is somebody who's actually spent more time in this studying helping you to understand about what you've read? Because some of it just, if you just read through it and you don't have other parts of the Bible in your brain to be able to reference, there's stuff that bounces back and forth all the time.
Well, in some ways, I would say that maybe the first time you read through it, maybe as much as I would love to say, go ahead and take something else to help you, somebody else's thoughts, but then you're kind of putting their almost theology on it. And sometimes you need to go through it and read it first and then go back. And then you're able to go, wait, hold on, that doesn't line up. Because when you're first starting, you don't have, the, what do you call it? You don't have other references in your mind already to go back, wait, that guy, that's not right what he just said. So in some ways, I think it's probably good not to do that. But then you made a interesting reference to, everyone points to John. And Brad Scott, when he was here, he made a really good, he said, everyone goes to John. But in John, it says the first words are in the beginning.
Right.
So, I think God knew that people were going to say that. And he's even telling them, go back to the beginning and I'll show you the whole story. So,
and that's what I've learned is that, and that's what I said to this gentleman. I said, find a place where you're going to actually just read. Find something that you can stick with. And I said, there's the whole concept of reading through, a chapter of Proverbs a day. It works out neatly that way. It's manageable, and you just do it. And the first time you read it, you can just do that on your own because that's pretty straightforward, and it's kind of standalone-ish. It's here's just some thoughts from God about my life, and how to apply it and such. And so, but like he wanted to dive into Revelation, and I said, well, the problem with that is it refers to everything else that's happened up to that point. And I said, if you want to read it, that's great, but understand that there's going to be references to things that you're not aware of. And so, again, that's where I've said when Brad was here, and I've said a lot, prior and before, and since prior and before, and but that the Old Testament I've found is a lot more relatable for me in application purposes. The New Testament's lecturing and teaching, here's what I need you to understand, but from and I did say this yesterday, every time I look at Israel and go, how dumb can those people be? it's like looking in the mirror. It's like, how dumb can I be to keep making the same mistakes that drives me away from God? And so that's what I think that the Old Testament has started to mean to me. Now, I will say it's way over my head. And there are things where I go, I know I'm missing stuff here, but
we're always going to be missing stuff.
Right. And that's the reality of it. That's the
more,
glory of it. That's
the more
the amazing part of it.
I understand the Old Testament and studying and stuff, the more I understand the New Testament and what it's actually saying. Just going back and, the New Testament is commentary on the Old Testament. So if we don't understand the foundation, how in the world do we expect to understand the New Testament?
Right.
We need both. And
I mean, I think a really bright person one time said the Old Testament is, see, I told you so. Oh, that was mean. It wasn't really a bright person, but no, I mean, I think that's it. You're absolutely right. We think the New Testament is easier because maybe the language is a little more familiar to us. Mm-hmm. It's Jesus talking right to us.
I think part of it is though too is, in the New Testament, they're always referring back to the Old Testament, so they're not necessarily laying down all the laws and stuff like that because they're already given. It's already there. I don't need to go over all this stuff with you. You already have it. So in some ways, I think it's easy for us to go, oh, well, we don't need that. We're free, all this stuff, and so we want to, just like a parent, like for me, under my parents, I would love to not have any rules and just do whatever I want. But guess what? That's not how it works.
Right.
I have rules.
And every time they talk to you, they don't have to go back over those rules because they're written down or they're known someplace. Right, exactly.
And if they do, then that's a flaw with my character.
Right. So, but they'll get like in the New Testament references as was said in here over here, or as Moses, so mm-hmm. that stuff's all there. And I think what I think more than people actually experiencing themselves, the reputation of the Old Testament is what scares people too, because they're like, they'll reference, all that, begatting here and numbers here. I mean, it's like, well, have you tried to read through it to actually see what it's like? Because it's not as thick as what you think. And the laws are dry, but
you know what? They're straightforward, so you know exactly what to do. At least it's not spoken in some hidden language where you can't understand it.
No, I will say it was like baffling about how. I mean, they're hard laws. I mean, there's some real
leave
banishing
the donkey
people.
alone.
Just banishing people.
That's not that hard.
Right? If you got this, you have to go away, and you have to go away for 7 days, and you can't come back. And you have to go away another 7 days. And I mean, that's when Randy and I were bouncing back and forth between, the woman with the issue of blood and why. For 12 years that she had dealt with it, but which meant she just kept getting pushed further and further away, and people just kept getting farther and farther away from her, and she had nothing, and it was like, well, there's really not a law that says that, right? I mean, I could see where the community would have a law that we want to quarantine you. Well, the community laws were the laws of God in their community, so now you go and you look at, I want to say it was Deuteronomy,
probably,
and it really says, no, you really have to get away from people. And you really can't touch things, and other people can't touch them after you. And
scientifically, that's proven. There are things in the blood that passes. I mean, that's, so
you're absolutely right.
God is smarter than we are.
No, and it's amazing that some of the things, I was thinking about this, that we were singing that song, As a Deer Panteth. That's a verse from the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Psalms, I think.
Yeah. And I just thought, there's stuff there that I wouldn't have thought. I never thought of deer in that part of the world. It wasn't written in America, where we have deer, 2 miles from here in Valparaiso Street, walking around the neighborhood, panting for water. No, there's just some things I'm like, wow, there's some big picture things in here I think we just sort of gloss over. The whole concept of seed being cast on different types of dirt. I mean, there's people that go to school for years to learn about how to plant seeds and make them be more effective. And, hey, maybe you should take the weeds out, and maybe you should have, go for the fertile soil and not pack all the soil down, have it nice and tilled up so that the seed can settle. Like that was written thousands and thousands of years ago. When I don't really think of agriculture as being that sophisticated. But somebody said this would be a good place to plant seed, and this would be a bad place to plant seed. And by the way, that's a good parable too. But here's something that you need to know. And so I think of it's just hard sometimes to grasp how I think some of the astrological things that are referenced in the Bible are amazing, to think that they were written thousands and thousands of years before we had the technology to even understand what was being referenced.
Well, Brad Scott brings out some amazing stuff, and he has some stuff on the seed and going throughout Scripture and what the seed means, and he has a chapter on the DNA, and it's just like, God is amazing just in how he builds our bodies. Like, everything screams him.
Right.
If you look close enough, you will find him.
Yeah.
And even in our bodies and everything that makes up the world, it screams his fingerprints all over it. And it's just so cool. It's mind-boggling.
And there was a time when science and religion were together. That there wasn't science trying to prove religion wrong, or I shouldn't say religion, prove God wrong. And now they're, for a lot of people, the antithesis. That should have been a word I left on the list. Don't try to pronounce today. The antithesis of each other. I couldn't say theologian. I still can't say it.
Theologian.
What?
Theologian.
Oh, theologian. I'm like,
For some reason, that word tried to come out of my mouth yesterday in the middle of my talk.
uh-oh.
And I just did the exact same thing. Theologian. That's where I was trying to get to. I couldn't. I don't know how I even started wrong, but however I start it is impossible to finish the word right. I mean, whatever, and I just lose it. So
Now I'm going to start saying it wrong.
brought a moment of levity to
Theologian.
my talk. Theologian, I think is where I think of
Theologian.
theology.
You're messing people up.
Morning, Alan. No, I know.
He really is.
I'm going to bring people down with me.
Supposed to edify, lift them up.
So anyway, you're listening to WITW 93.5 LPFM.
Valparaiso.
It's 9 o'clock or just thereabouts. It's a Monday morning. Jackie Jones is with us. We're chatting a little Hebrew, a little blessing. Blessing is the conjugated word, the same thing. Bless.
Bless and blessing.
Blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Chatting
Just
a
how we
little
say it. Means the same thing.
little recap of grace and just some how to dig in. And then I will say again, that's one of the things that when you fire up a bunch of people and you tell them that there's a lot of answers in the Bible, there's people that want to dig in and where do you start? And I will say that I think, and this is one of the things I said in my talk, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about over the weekend. And obviously the crux of my talk was the body of Christ. But that first step is believing. The book opens up a whole lot more once you believe for it. You're not trying to question going in, like, I'm going to read this and it's going to give me answers. Well, if that's your attitude you're coming in with, that's one thing. If I believe and I want to know what God's word is to me, that's your heart's in a different spot. I think the book does open up differently. You're a little more inspired to read, not sort of, okay, you show me. Yeah, you show me what I'm supposed to do. All right, no, I'd share with me. Let me know. Give me direction.
Yep.
And I think that's the other thing I said a bunch this weekend was that, the will's in the word. I mean, it really is right there. We've got to stop sitting on the sidelines waiting for it, some carrier pigeon or FedEx, because, those two things are both very popular still today. Just some sort of message to fall out of the sky. It's already here. Don't even try. Just, let it go. Just, I know you want to. Just, I'm still lacking sleep and capacity to really put things together.
I said an extra prayer this morning as I stepped out of the car and asked God to use me, as I always do. I always ask him to use me and make me usable and to use the Spirit to speak through me. And before I stepped away from the car and shut the door, I said, or not. and that's the first time.
Was that an or not statement? Exercise in or notness.
First time I really prayed in that way, and as I'm quite amused as I'm sitting here, pretty much just listening to the two of you. I'm like, okay, all right, Lord, I can be quiet.
I'm or not today. Not ornate, I'm or not.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it was, so that's blessing. Is the word, I think as we learn words and understand words, we sort of unspiritualize words. I think we take them out of, as we talk about context, I think more and more today, we like the word, something like fellowship has a deeply rooted spiritual tie to it. But now it's like, fellowship is just kind of whenever people get together.
Yeah, it's the word for church. It's the same word for assembly, which is all, we think that church is a New Testament thing. So there's a new church, and the word church traces back in the Hebrew to mean assembly. I had it all the time. So church is not a new thing. It was always in the beginning, in the walk in the garden. Everything goes back to the beginning. You can't take
It's
it
a
away
big
from
garden. There's a lot of stuff there.
I can't wait to see the garden.
Have we seen misuse of the word blessing in your sense then, where we apply it to things that are not truly rooted in the same sense of blessing that we're using it today? Do you see any sort of I don't want to say abuse of the word, but maybe reapplication of the word in a different way?
I think that we, in some ways, yes, because we tend to just take that word and just say bless you, and like I said, Greek thinking is just words. All I have to say is words, and that's fine. Whereas in Hebrew, it's words with action. So if we're just going to go around and, say a blessing on people and then walk away and not do anything, there's nothing there, When any of the fathers blessed their children, he would pray blessing over them and to give them their inheritance or give them, other things to show how they were blessing him in a physical and spiritual way. There is both. Don't get me wrong. Like there is something special about a father praying over their, his children, and that's a sign of protection, and so many different pictures in that. But in that, the father is showing that he's blessing them by protecting them, by being there, being the father that he's supposed to be, all these things. So it's not just the words. So in that way, I would say we do probably misuse it because we just say words are enough, which is a lot of our society today. We just, that's all that matters.
There's something you said, and I thought fleetingly skipped through my brain, and now I can't remember what it was.
Theologian.
Love that.
It was not theologian. There was something along the lines of, when the blessing of, the act of blessing in, let's say, Jesus blessed the bread and then gave it out. How would that be? So he blessed it and gave it.
And then gave it.
Right, okay.
He acted on it. So there's both of them.
So in the blessing of something like that, how would that be looked at? I'm trying to think of how to apply that in the conversation that we had then, or the conversation we're having about the blessing being an act of kneeling, but when you're bringing something before God to be blessed,
the Hebrew word in here it's Yahweh will kneel before you presenting gifts.
Okay.
So it's not just he's kneeling before you, he's kneeling before you and he's presenting gifts. It's all one word. Bless. I mean, it's not two different words, and will present gifts. It's all one word. So he will kneel before you and he will present gifts. That's all blessed.
Same thing. Okay. All right. Well, super. Blessing. I need to now think about like a salutation, like, blessings for you, or God bless you, or whatever it is. I guess that's
he will kneel before you.
That's right, exactly.
Gifts.
May God bless you and your
keep
family. Well, that's the ironic. No, not the Arionic.
Aaronic.
Arionic would be Little Mermaid's.
No.
No, the Little Mermaid. What was the word now?
What?
No, what's the phrase?
Aaronic.
What's the second word? Aaronic.
Blessing.
Blessing. That's what
yeah.
it is. All right. So the
But I would say a
Ironic.
challenge for us, like what are we learning from this?
Right.
How are we blessing other people? Are we just blessing people with our words, or are we blessing people with our actions in our words?
I like to bless people with my presence.
Wow.
That was ironic. That was a joke,
I was
actually.
not expecting you to say that.
No, but I think you're right. I think that we do need to think about, again, it's that next step in the process. I mean, we can just say stuff or we can act on stuff. There was a lot said this weekend. Let me just go back to that. There's a lot said this weekend. And our great prayer that we lift up and challenge and charge that we give people is don't let this die when you walk out of here. There's nothing super spiritualized about the place where we were. The song that I like that they called The
One
Kingdom.
song?
The Kingdom by Starfield, the
That's
the
Whoa,
Kingdom.
Whoa,
Whoa, whoa
song.
song.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember how you termed it. But there's a line in there that the kingdom is inside of you. It's everywhere you are. And that's what I said. Don't let this be like you walk through the gate and it's like, oh, deflation. It's God has put this in you to take out to other people. And so the kingdom isn't resident in a single place. It's resident wherever his people are, wherever his word's being spread, and wherever people are gathering or wherever it might be. So that I just remember, and it almost sounds desperate at some point. Like, don't let this end here today. I mean, we're going to be on fire. We're all fired up. We're stoked. We're at a spiritual high. But we've got to do something to translate that back into the rest of the world, because while we've sort of gone into this little safe haven, not South Haven, but safe haven, the rest of the world continued on. There was a comment about something. Oh, the wind was blowing very hard out of the east, which is kind of different. Normally the wind's south, southwest, north. It was gusting out of the east when we were walking, and we thought, what is going on? It dawned on several of us like about the same time. It's like, we don't know what the weather is. We don't know what's going on. We don't know news. We're cut off from the world in that regard.
Side note, wind is referred to as the Holy Spirit.
Oh. Well, he was coming
That's the
from
concrete
the east.
form.
Is it really?
Just saying.
There you go.
Wait,
But
do normal people know where the wind, like what
I don't.
direction?
Several
the
of us. I
wind-
mean,
I thought-
if you think naturally the
I don't mean
the
normal. I mean,
move
not
of
that we're not. That
no, that's
came out wrong.
fine. It doesn't never come from the east, but it caught us off guard coming from the east. You think of a north wind being cold because it comes from the north. You think of like westerly winds and southern winds, like you get a nice southern breeze.
But you're
it's
assuming
warm.
that we think about wind.
How do you not think about wind when it's blowing at 20 miles an hour?
Well, when it's blowing, I guess.
Well, that's when we were thinking about it. It was blowing on us, and it was blowing on us from the east. So that was, and it wasn't alone. We're guys, I guess. Maybe this is what we think about. We like the Weather Channel, and so we just. It was like we all had the same thought about the same time. It's like, what if something's like really happened out in the world and we just kind of missed it? What if like the Mayans missed by a few months and the tectonic shift took place and the winds are coming? It didn't, but it was just like this weird thought. It was that sort of realization that we've really cut ourselves off from the world. This is Sunday morning. We haven't picked up a newspaper. Not that I do when I have a newspaper, but haven't listened to the news. Haven't talked to anybody outside to see what was really going on. Didn't know that Derrick Rose tore out his ACL. Don't really even know what that. I thought he was a baseball player. That's Derrick Rose. I guess he
What?
plays for
No.
the Bulls.
Don't.
It's kind of a
Never
sad,
mind.
Don't ask questions.
sad Bulls thing.
Keep going.
So, but that was like big news for somebody coming into camp. You guys didn't hear that Derrick Rose blew out his knee. It was like, wasn't even on our radar. Wasn't even something we were concerned about.
Well,
Sorry,
it's in my
Derek.
world.
Sorry for you. Sorry for all you Bulls fans out there. I guess that's a devastating blow. But yeah, we were. I really had to think of who Derrick Rose was. I mean, it was like, this is a Cubs fan coming in, sort of dooming the Cubs for the balance of the year, and I was a Bulls fan. So
Jeter, that's who you're thinking of.
Jeter?
Derek. Jeter.
No, I really wasn't.
Right? He's a
I
baseball
really
player,
did. I
isn't
knew
he?
he was a Chicago ball player of some sort. I just didn't know what sport. And I forgot basketball's still going on. So I just figured it was Cubs because we were bemoaning the Cubs already. Maybe. I don't even know. I'm not keeping up with it. So anyway, that's just, that was like a couple things where this realization, man, we're really cut off from information. And we're not, way out in the wilderness. We're not days away. We haven't traveled 3 days to get out there. I mean, we were Camp Lawrence, right close to 6 and close to, or not 6, 6, the toll road, and 49. I mean, we're right there, but it seemed like we're days away. I didn't get very orderly in the wilderness, I will say that. I did not take advantage of that. For those of you who are fans of the orderly wilderness.
Did you communicate with any bees?
I did not communicate with any bees.
Any locusts?
The one thing that you latch onto is the thing that we didn't really talk about.
Welcome to my
Welcome to Jen's world. Did talk to the hill a few times because it seemed to be getting steeper as the weekend went.
You talked to the hill?
Oh
okay,
my
no,
gosh.
you're not going to give him any flack about that. Jeez.
Man, it
I
was
have
getting
nothing to
big.
say. I have nothing to say to that. We didn't even talk about a hill.
He talked to the hill.
Right, man, it was getting steep. It was getting steep.
Oh
It's
my
getting
goodness.
steep in here.
Yeah. So, anyway, so that was, we'll say, and Randy texted. I'm not sure where Randy is now. I think he was out for part of the weekend. It's funny. We were just talking about the weather, and the weather just came up. I'm not sure what that
I
means.
think the weather's here all the time.
It is, even when it's blowing from the east. A couple notes that people sent. Somebody sent a note about, I don't know who this is. Oh, it's Randy. Randy?
Well, good morning, Randy.
No, it's...
Good morning, coffee drinking man.
It was a group...
You can't hear me because he's got
headphones
headphones on.
It was a group email
Darn.
that included Randy. And who else? Man, it was somebody that sent out an email to several of us. All right, so Chris Sandberg sent a note to say that, he was in on Thursday, right, to talk about Feed the
Correct.
Need. They collected over 8,000 pounds of food.
Awesome.
Their goal was 8,000. They hit 8263.
Awesome.
And it says it's the largest single-day food drive for Northwest Indiana Food Bank.
Wow.
Thanks, everyone who was involved with that. After chatting with him on Thursday, I went to Valpo Velvet and had lunch because we were talking about it was pulled pork Thursday. So he texted me later and said, hey, they do have it. So I went over to visit Kathy Brown over there and had some lunch. Met again Christine Morrison and chatted, had a nice conversation over lunch. And he said, oh, we got to listen. I said, yeah, you do. You need to listen. Let's see, catching up here. Alan Marinick, our friend, is interviewed this morning, or interviewed. Texted this morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Alan. In reading and understanding the Bible, he uses YouVersion, which is what I was just using. He actually has it read along with him. So he's hearing it and reading it at the same time. There's some audible versions
That's cool.
versions of the Bible. That's interesting. I've never done that before. Or like you're reading over a period of time, like when you're in church and you're following along with scripture, sometimes you'll be reading and hearing it read. But that's an interesting tactic I've not ever seen done an individual study. Oh, he's back to work in Indy. Thank you, Randy. Randy's listening this morning. I will say that, and kind of revisiting the closing thing that somebody texted about. As again, it's not a hey, look how many people we moved this way, but there's times I've gone through it and a number of people haven't had anything to say at the end of this, at the wrap up, the opportunity to share what the weekend meant to you. And there wasn't anybody that didn't have something to say. And there are sometimes people who get up and they feel like they have to say something, and they'll just, they'll say thanks for everybody who did stuff. And again, I'm not grading, I'm not judging, I'm just like blown away by the heartfeltness of the comments that people had. That gives me hope. I mean, I think that's where I lean on this, is that it gives me hope that that there are guys and gals out there, and it'll be, maybe we'll have to drag Lisa in here tomorrow. Oh, we have somebody coming in tomorrow?
Well,
Do we know?
So I'll confirm today.
Okay. If not, maybe we'll drag Lisa in, because we know she loves to be on the air as much as Jackie.
Because I love this.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Speaking it into power. So you just said you love it, and see, that's the thought that's
It's a manifestation.
Right now. Exactly. But I think did she just laugh out there? I think she's laughing about the fact that
Just laughing at us. Just laughing with us.
She's
She's
laughing with
near
us.
us.
No, I'm thinking of her. Yeah. So I think that seeing kind of the way I started, this move of God into men's lives, and knowing that they were, I will say the other thing that I heard this weekend more than I've heard from any other banquet that I've been on was the number of guys that were ready to leave Thursday night. There was one guy that said if there was a bus here, it would have been filled and there would have been no one left. Because you walk into this thing and it's just kind of odd. You don't know a lot of people. You don't know what's ahead of you. And if given the opportunity, they would bail before they stayed. And it goes, I mean, the grip that the world has on people is that strong, that there's the possibility of you meeting God in a place and not knowing exactly how that was going to come about. You'd rather go back into the world because that was safer. That was a powerful thing that these folks said, because now by Friday they were like, there's something here and I need to know it. I need to hear it. I need to see it. And just the experience of it all stacking up, how it's a physical experience, it's a mental experience, it's a heart experience. Just really.
So as like by the end of the week, were the men really like digging into the word almost? I mean, were they pushed to that point of where they needed to go themselves and study?
And that's what you're here. You know, I want to go back and be. I've gone to church, but now I want to be doing stuff for people. I want to go be active, and I'm not just going to go, as I say, punch the clock on Sundays. As Don Yowell said, and he was quoting somebody else, called it churchianity. You know, where you're going to a church, there's no deep, godly thing in it. Yeah, I'm going to church, and I think that's enough. And I've said here, I've said in a lot of places, that's what concerns me probably as much about God losing people, is that people think just showing up at church is enough. You know, you get there at 9. Doug shared this, and I'll give a peek of his talk.
Morning, Doug.
And this is where I was too. It's funny when he was talking, and we've talked about how we have this. There's a lot of you put us side by side. There's not a lot of similarities between Doug and a lot of guys. He's like this, cover boy type guy. I mean, he could be, he's like I call him a magnet personality. I've tagged several people, a handful of people with that tag, that people are drawn to, and he has a great personality, and he's engaging, and he's a good-looking guy, he's an athletic guy, and, he played basketball in high school and college, and so, people are naturally drawn to him. But then there's things that, as we talked, we have very similar things in our lives. Not if you look on the surface, but there's things that we've dealt with. And we were very similar. When he started going to church because he was taking his kids to church, it was very similar to what I said in my talk. You get there a little late, you find a way to leave a little early, and you think you've gone and done your thing for the week because you've gone to church. And at some point, he and I and others, and what you heard was that's not good enough anymore. Now I know better. I know now what. I'm sorry, I don't know what, but I do know that there's something greater. And the number of people who are picking up Bibles and picking up books and picking up just different things to start to get into it more, to have something more tangible to help them understand that it's just not going to get there in an hour or less on Sunday. So yeah, there's definitely, like I said, there's a number of people who are saying, how do you get into the Bible? How do you read it? Where do you start? And I just said, I'm different now. I just really go back to the beginning. And it may not be the easiest read, but if you open yourself up to it, it'll amaze you.
He'll reveal himself to you.
Yeah, it'll amaze itself. You'll be amazed by it. And then I said, it will draw you in. I said, the thing you need to be aware of is once you start and you open yourself up to it, if you want to talk about begatting, reading the Bible begats reading the Bible. I mean, you're going to say, man, I want more. I want to get deeper into this, and so
it's a longing
that's the challenge
to know Him better, to know Him more intimately, and when we do that, when we study His Word, then we become more in tune with Him, and we start walking like He walked.
Yeah,
I was I don't know when I said this. It was a little bit ago when I brought up, I think it was in my prayer or something. I said to be little walking Yeshuas.
Okay.
You
did say that.
While I was studying, that came into my head, and I just started laughing because, but that is what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be, like I said, in the image of Him,
right.
His character is breathed into us.
Yeah.
So, we have no excuse.
Well, it goes back to, we are in, He's put Him in us. Mm-hmm. And the collective Him. Like I said, there's aspects of each of Him that he's implanted in us. So,
so find out what pleases Him.
Right, and there's one
Him.
Place to go for that.
Yep.
And so, that is.
I hope that just bringing out these words that I'm studying just pushes people to go and study, because as much as I would love people to understand, everything that I just did, you know what? Even when I hear other people talk, you need to go and study it out yourself.
Absolutely.
Having me say it doesn't mean it's right. So you need to go and you need to study it, so beyond a shadow of a doubt that, that the word is true.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key. Whatever you need to do what you need to do to get into it. And it like everything you give to God will give you back more. I think when I say that, and when people hear that, they're like, oh, you're just talking about money. If I give money, I'll get. It's not about money. Money is a component of that. There's an obedience factor to that. But and so when I say that, I can't read and not get back more. I can't say that with every book that I have. There's books that I enjoy, but there hasn't been a book that I've read in my life where it's been like I got to read the same thing over again and again and again, and I'm going to get more out of it than what I'm putting into it.
Well, it goes back to the blessing and the curses. If you bless them, I'll bless you. And goes back to the ironic blessing. He will kneel down before you, presenting gifts, and and at the end of it, it says, and He will set in place all you need to be whole and complete, and that is the word of God. I
have the ironic blessing. I've figured it out. The ironic blessing was when God was saying to Moses that He would take care of them, that there would be manna, and that He would provide for those people that didn't even believe in Him. I think that's an ironic blessing, because it's like, I know you're really not going to be good for this. I know right now you're going to mess up, but I'm going to bless you anyway. And I'm going to provide this for you on a daily basis, knowing full well you don't deserve it, that you're going to turn your back on me again anyway, and that I'm going to prove out to you that I'm as faithful as I say I am. I'm consistent through time.
In some ways, that's exactly what we do with the word. The word is, it's almost in every home. It's not in every home, but it's the book that's probably the most read, but there's a guy that says, I can't remember his name now. It's a quote. The Bible is the most largely read book, but it's less examined than any other book. And isn't that so sad? That's exactly what we do. We, instead of blessing Him by reading it and doing what He says, instead we spit on it and we don't do anything. we say, oh, he'll teach us, or, whatever, we'll go to church, or,
Right.
and not search it out on our own. And that's our fault, and there are curses that come with that. So.
Yeah, that's the other thing I will tell you I had to bite my tongue on, and I need to bite my tongue here in a minute anyway because we got to go. But when people talk about God turning his back on his people, not sure if you know if God's turned your back if your back's turned his back if your back's turned. How do you know God's turned his back on you if your back's already turned to him? And I believe that, again, God's consistent time across time because he's outside of time. So he's the same God to the same of us. And while he turned his back so they became slaves, how would they know? They walked so far away from him and ignored everything that he has said in such great, whatever the word is that needs to fill that blank. They couldn't possibly have known if God turned his back. And I don't believe, thank you, I don't believe that God did turn his back. He probably just stood there and went, what have I got to do? Well, and then knows at some point they'll come back and I'll be the same God then.
Mm-hmm. He's never changing.
And as Tiny said the other day, there's a song that we play and the line is, he's the same God that got you in will get you out. And so he's the same God. He's consistent. We're the fallible ones, right? Mm-hmm. We're the ones that, hey, things are great, thank you God, and then go running off in the other direction.
Yeah.
I'll get back with you.
Well, if we want to know if we're on the right track or not, read his word and we'll know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the word convicts, and that's what it comes down to. Is
right.
If you want to know if you're following in his ways.
And that's what probably makes it hard too. I mean, because I can read an entertainment book, a book that's just like happy-go-lucky and has no anything that's going to really convict me. But if I'm reading the Bible and I go, oh, really? But that's not your will for me. That's for somebody else. That's old school. That's the law. And that's the other thing too, this break between grace and law. I still struggle with a little bit too, because it doesn't usurp everything. There's still things in there, as we've talked about, that are still there. God is consistent. His word's consistent. And so and we can learn from that.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, Jackie. Thanks for the blessing of your
Do you want me just to read
presence.
the blessing as we go out?
That would be great.
Okay.
That would be great. Tomorrow we may have somebody.
Todd Lisinski may be coming in tomorrow. I'll confirm.
Okay.
And post on.
And
Facebook
if not, Lisa, we'll drag you in here.
Yep.
If Todd can't make it, we'll bring Lisa in. She can share a little bit of her story, and then.
You're not asking. You're just telling her.
No, because she needs to share. And here's the thing: people are intimidated by the radio. This is not an intimidating thing. I will say, spend some time with. Would you just splash yourself?
Yes.
We captured that on video.
Spitting. We're not spitting.
That was not us spitting on you, right? Exactly.
Sorry.
I did have some time to spend with Jim Norris this weekend, and I will tell you the inspiration that he is for me was nothing but confirmed beyond confirmation. The stuff that he's going through right now, the story about where he talks to get to, and I told him he needs to come in and share a story too. And he says, "Well, I don't do radio." I'm like, "When have you had the opportunity? Seriously, it's just talking."
Right.
Yeah, I don't do it either. So.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Some people say I don't either, but the reality is he just a quick snap, and maybe I'll talk more about this tomorrow if we have time to talk. All the stuff that he's facing and staring into, he looks back and it's exactly what I've been talking about, one of my frustrations, and I was just bawling through his. I mean, it was just like blasting through Kleenex again during his talk. And it wasn't because I was sad for him. It's because I was sad for me. Because the faith that he has in the face of what he's facing, what he's going through, he is truly going in faith. And not that there's not bad days, but there's nothing that can happen to him now that will diminish where he is with God and knowing where he's going to go. And that's the attitude he has going in. And that's the attitude I knew he had, and I wish I could have.
You can.
I know I can, and that's even sadder that I don't, that I falter, and that the majority of us do. But to see and then hear him see or hear him say that, and I mean, it's not like he's going in for hangnail surgery. I mean, he's dealing with substantial substantial medical issue, and the outcome is already known, ultimately for him. And anything between now and then,
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Life and death cannot separate us from the love that we have.
So, anyway, I did want to share that because he is someone that I continue to pray for and continue to lift up, and his wife Nancy, who we've talked about, known about, finally met this weekend. They're just living it. They're just living it out. So another wonderful experience of the weekend. So, yep, share our little blessing as we go.
Okay.
And we will be back tomorrow.
Numbers 6:24 through 26. Yahweh will kneel before you presenting gifts, and he will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yahweh will illuminate the wholeness of his being toward you, bringing order, and he will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahweh will lift up the wholeness of his being and look upon you, and he will set in place all you need to be whole and complete.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for coming in and sharing. Appreciate all the time you put into it and spending the time with us. Jen, thanks for coming in and sharing your very selective words.
Theologian.
And rubbing in one that I can't say. So anyway, hope everybody has a great week. Figure we'll end with this one. The one we were talking, the woo-woo song, or what is it? The whoa-whoa song.
The whoa, whoa, whoa song. Yep. Happy Monday.
Kingdom is inside.